All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Empowered Esquire TV. As you see from the title of this video, we are discussing the state of Florida, the brother Polight. I believe his government name is Michael Nowak. I think that's the right pronunciation, right? So, what I intended on doing to kind of welcome you all into this topic is play a video by KKC, also known as King Kong Crazy, where he talks about, or rather, where he shows an NBC news clipping about Polite's arrest. However, there's Hurricane Henry, I believe is the name of this storm coming through, and he is causing some issues with my internet. And for some reason, YouTube is acting up and KKC's clip won't play. So instead, we're going to watch the clip from NBC News themselves. I always prefer to, give a shout out or a nod to the fam when I can, but unfortunately, it's not working out today. So we're going to watch it directly from NBC News. So welcome to everyone in the chat. Let's check out what NBC News had to say about Brother Polight, aka Michael Nowak's arrest, and then we will dive into the state of Florida criminal code. We will talk about what these charges mean, how much time he could be facing, and also whether or not some of those around him, i.e., Sonetter, because, let's be real, that's the main person that we think of when we think of people around Polight, right? Okay. So we'll also dive into whether or not Sonetter and others could possibly be implicated in some of these accusations. In the meantime, as I always tell you, living in the city, and it's a Sunday, so if you hear a kerfuffle outside, it is what it is, right? So let me share my screen. Hello to Crime Spotter, KKC, and The Rev. Let's see what NBC News had to say.
Speakers making headlines for the wrong reason. NBC6 reporter Kim Nguyen is live in Miami Beach tonight with more on the arrest of the man known as Brother Polight. Kim.
Yeah, well, Jawan, the suspect surrendered here at the Miami Beach Police Department earlier this week. Police charged him with sexual battery of a 14-year-old girl. We did speak with his lawyer earlier tonight, who says that these charges are false.
This is the mugshot of 37-year-old Michael Nowak Jr., also known as Brother Polight, to his more than 300,000 Instagram followers. Miami Beach police arrested Nowak this week for alleged sexual battery of a 14-year-old girl in a hotel room in February. Police say the alleged victim was the daughter of a woman he was romantically linked to. Defense attorney David Terrace says his client is innocent.
Once the evidence is produced, that he is going to be exonerated. So yeah, not guilty, nothing else.
According to the police report, Nowak, a motivational speaker and author who lives in LA, asked the woman if he could take her daughter to an after party at a club in Miami. The report states Nowak took the teen to his hotel after seeing that the club was closed. Police say the suspect gave the teen alcohol and started dancing and touching the teen inappropriately, groping her breast, inner thighs, and buttocks. It goes on to say Nowak tried to force the teen to perform oral sex on him. The teen allegedly passed out and woke up to Nowak trying to make her throw up.
These are serious allegations, but in any situation, there is always motive. There is always a lot behind the scenes that the public is not going to be able to see.
The report states that the girl's mother found her intoxicated and possibly on drugs, with severe swelling on her mouth and lips. It later states Nowak told the mother not to call police because it would ruin his career. Nowak was served with a DNA warrant in June and surrendered to police on Monday. Terrace says the police report is only an allegation.
And Nowak claims to have written more than 90 books. In an interview, he also claims to have several wives. For now, we're reporting live in Miami Beach. Kim Nguyen, NBC6 News.
So there you have it. You've just gotten a brief introduction into who Michael Nowak is, who Polight is, and what he's being accused of. So let's have a quick conversation about warrants, DNA warrants in particular, and how this process works. So there's been a lot of discussion online about different types of warrants and what a DNA warrant is, what it means, and whether or not it means that the DNA was a match, right? That's been the biggest kerfuffle, is whether or not the DNA was a match. So let me enlighten us on how this process works. So there are different stages and different burdens of proof for each stage of a criminal accusation. So initially, and this is hypothetically, right? Initially, a victim comes into a police station and says, I need to report a crime, right? In this instance, a young woman and her mother allegedly went into a Miami-Dade police station and reported this crime. Now, with this type of crime, the state says to themselves, we don't really have enough to just arrest Michael Nowak, right? But we have enough to meet the burden of proof for a DNA warrant. And if that DNA were to come back as matching, right, as a positive match, then we would have enough to actually arrest Michael Nowak. So for those of you online who have been saying the DNA had to have been a match, that is how he got arrested, you are correct. There is no way that the authorities could have arrested Michael Nowak if the DNA came back as an absolute negative, no chance that it could have been him, right? Now, does it mean that it was a 100% match? No. And quite frankly, DNA is almost never a 100% match. It's usually in the range of 95 to 99.9%, okay? So initially, the victim reports the crime. They take the report. They go to a judge with that report as probable cause for a DNA warrant. And if upon testing the DNA they've received, they get a match, then they've met that next level of burden of proof for them to complete the arrest. Get it? Got it. All right, let me say hello to everyone in the chat. Hello, let me see your transcripts. Hello, beautiful yours. That's a wonderful name. Hello, Whip Fanatic TV. And yes, peace to everyone in the chat. If you are in the building and would like a shout out, give me a little hello and I'll be sure to recognize you. I love to have that conversation while we're here. And really, this is for us all to have this moment of edification, right? For us all to learn about the law, learn about this process, and be able to have a educated dialogue about it. Hi to Michelle Jordan. Okay. Oh, no problem, Michelle. If you need to take a nap, I get it. And hi to Rose EZ. I hope I said your name correctly. So now that we understand how DNA warrants work, right, that they are granted with some level of proof, but they are used as the proof for the next stage of the prosecution, does anyone have any questions about DNA warrants, about the reporting of this type of crime, anything in that nature? Because if you don't, we are going to hop into the Florida statutes and take a look at what Polight is being charged with and what the details are of these charges. Whip Fanatic TV says, it's just sad how we no longer care for our young as we were cared for. Interesting perspective. Okay, so I don't see any questions about DNA warrants, so we are going to hop right into the state of Florida statutes, okay? So as I'm sure you heard in the video, right, there are 3 charges. Now, let me actually pull up the screenshot of Michael Nowak's arrest and his charges. Let me do that, and then we'll go into the statute. So, share screen, Miami-Dade County. All right, here we go. So here you are looking at the Miami-Dade Clerk of Courts, criminal justice system. They record online, as do all states, their state arrest, their ongoing open prosecutions, and what the posture of the case is. Now, posture of the case is legalese. It's a term we use in the legal world. And it means, well, what's going on? What stage is the case in? Is it in a beginning stage? Has it gone to trial? Has it been disposed of some other way? That's the posture of the case. So here you see all the info, right? You see his name, you see his date of birth, you see the date these charges were filed, right? You see who the judge is that is assigned to this matter, and you see the posture of the case. Now let's go down into the charges. We see total charges 3. So it appears to be one count of each of these charges. Okay, it doesn't appear to be multiple counts, at least not that we can see from this website. So we see there's a felony here. It's engaging in some type of, we try to beat the algorithm on this channel, but honestly, I think at this point we might be too far gone. But it's engaging in some type of inappropriate conduct with a minor, and it says the age is 14. That's a felony in the state of Florida. Then they have a battery in an inappropriate manner of someone who is the ages 12 to 17 when the defendant is 18 or older, and that is also a felony. And then we have contributing to the delinquency of a minor as the last charge, which is a misdemeanor. So, in case you're not familiar with criminal prosecutions, the main difference in terms of punishment for felonies and misdemeanors is that usually your misdemeanors carry a term of a year imprisonment or less, and your felonies carry a term of a year imprisonment or more, right? Typically more than a year is when you're getting into the realm of felony prosecution and imprisonment. So keep in mind these charges, because we're going to hop into the state of Florida Criminal Code and take a look at each of these charges, okay? So I'll stop sharing for a moment just to hop back in the chat. I don't see any, oh, I see some questions. Hold on. So Mara Cherise, hi, how are you, by the way? Mara Cherise says, were we cared for, or did most just never talk about it? Oh, you know, we have to remember that we're in the age of information, right? We're in the age of social media. And I think Mara has a good point. I think a lot of these things that we are discussing now and having these discussions anew about are things that really have been happening already. But because there was no social media, no Instagram, no Twitter, you know, no iPhone that people could record everything on, I think it just wasn't being discussed as much. Mara, very good point. Okay. KKC says, as a responsible adult, your name should never be in any conversation or scenario where alcohol, DNA, teens, and hotels is involved. Another interesting point. Morrow says the delinquency of a minor was giving a minor drug/alcohol, possibly correct. We will get to that, Mara. And Crime Spotter wants to know, could there be a settlement where the victim doesn't take the stand so as not to relive what happened, where he'd say, I was never convicted? Interesting. So there are some different ways that this could be disposed of, to answer Crime Spotter's question. Now, it is possible that Michael Nowak will take some sort of plea to a lesser charge. If you are familiar with Kwame Brown, you know all about lesser charges by now, right? Because he goes in on Charlemagne the God and lesser charges in these types of cases. So more than likely, the prosecution will have some type of offer on the table. Michael Nowak could plead to a lesser charge, and that would kind of ensure that the victim doesn't have to relive this. And quite frankly, very often that does happen, because prosecutors who prosecute these types of crimes are usually specifically assigned to these types of crimes. And they are very sensitive to young victims and the psychological trauma it does to have to relive. For those of you who have never worked with these types of victims before, I'm a former prosecutor. I worked with, DV victims, including families that have been abused and things like that, right? And it is very, very difficult for these victims to relive what happened to them. In fact, a lot of them suffer from PTSD that is only further compounded by, having to testify. So yes, Crime Spotter, it is very likely that the prosecution will say, will you plead to this lesser charge? And then my Vic doesn't have to relive this. But of course, that will be up to whether or not he's willing to admit some level of culpability, because he still has to admit some level of culpability. Then Jason Stevens wants to know, what sort of evidence could have been used in a DNA warrant? So what would happen, as I said, hypothetically, is that the victim would report the crime. So she would go into the police station and she would make a report that says, well, the police would make the report, but she would report to them, he did the allegations that we heard in the news channel. He invited me to a hotel. He took me there. I think that I might have been drugged because I passed out. I felt that I was violated. And all of this would be reduced to writing. And that report would be brought to a judge by a prosecutor, in which the prosecutor would say, Your Honor, I am applying for a DNA warrant. In my application for this warrant, I have the sworn testimony of my victim. So it is actually the police report. And also in this instance, they did a rape kit, right? So it would be the police report and it would be the findings of that kit that would be brought to the judge for the judge to actually grant a DNA warrant. Okay, Jason, I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, let me know. Let's see. Any other questions? Crime Spotter says, could he be made to register as a file? Yes, he could be. We are going to get into that. Lisa Johnson wants to know, would the lesser charge still require him to register as an offender? The contributing to the delinquency of a minor charge would not. That charge would not require that type of registry. All right, so let's hop into the actual charges. And after the charges, I have prepared for you, as some of you who are not novice, as some of you who are a pro fight here would know, I like to prepare what I call little cheat sheets for you, where I tell you how much time in prison each charge equates to, right? So after we go into the code and look at the law, we're going to look at our cheat sheet. So let's dive in. Oh, Bodacious Lady, hello. Bodacious Lady is asking, can the victim file a lawsuit before a trial takes place? She can. It's not advised. It's never advised to file a lawsuit when you still have the open criminal matter. It's always advised to resolve the criminal matter and then file the civil lawsuit. But she could go ahead and file the lawsuit tomorrow if she wanted to. Okay. And Whip Fanatic said he will have to register because it was blank no matter what. Whip Fanatic, actually not. Contributing to the delinquency of a minor is not an intimate crime. The other charges are. Okay. All right, here we go. Share screen. I'm going to start by showing you the page that has the statutes, and then we'll dive in. So if you are a pro fight here, you know all about Online Sunshine. If you're new here, welcome. This is Online Sunshine. It is the website that lists all of the information about the Florida government, their Senate, their House, and all of their statutes, which includes, of course, their criminal code. Okay? So you come down here, you see crimes, and you see they have the list of their different classes of crimes, right? Okay, so we are actually going to go... I actually have the direct link for you. So you know what? I am going to pull up the direct link so you don't have to sit there. So you don't have to shift through all of the different statutes with me, right? All right, here we go. Now I have the direct one for you. Let's see if there's any more questions in the meantime. Crime Spotter says, isn't that the same blank that Charlemagne was charged with? I believe so, Crime Spotter. I believe Charlemagne pled guilty to contributing to the delinquency of a minor or something like that, allegedly. I think that was the lesser charge that he ended up saying he was guilty of, which, as we've said, doesn't have the same registry requirement because it's not necessarily an intimate offense. Okay. All right. So now that you've seen the general page, right, let's get into it. So here you go. This is the chapter for blank battery, right? And so here they have all of the definitions. Now, when you look at statutes, you will notice they always give you the definitions first. That is to allow you to be informed as to what they're referring to when you start diving into the statute. And really, it's very extensive. They define everything. I mean, you can see here, they define what consent means. They define what offender means. They define what victim means. It's very, very detailed. Okay. Alrighty, so here you see all of your different chapters here, okay? And you see they start talking about age difference. So now when you come here to, let's see, Let's make sure we know what chapter we're in. So 79.4011, you see when you come down here to section 4, I believe it was? Yes, 4A, right? You see a person 18 years of age or older who commits blank upon a person 12 years of age or older, but younger than 18 years of age without that person's consent under any of the circumstances listed in paragraph E, right, commits a felony of the first degree, punishable by a term of years not exceeding life. So if we go back up here to E, we see that that statute is actually referring to when there is a victim who's under the age of 18, a defendant who is over the age of 18, and there's some sort of action there that causes that person to be incapacitated, right? And we're going to dive into that as well. So now I'm going to stop sharing for a moment so I can have a bit of water, answer any more questions. And then we're going to look at the statute for the next felony, which is engaging in blank conduct with a 14-year-old. So if you have any questions about that first statute, let me know before we dive into our next statute. All right, I don't see any questions. So we are going to dive into our next statute. We're actually going to go ahead and go to contributing to the delinquency of a minor next. Okay. Window. All right, so here we are. So now we are in chapter 827, okay? And we see that the name of this chapter is abuse of children. They have a few different crimes they have in this same chapter, but what is important to us is contributing to the delinquency or dependency of a child. That's the important part for us, right? So you can click it directly and it leads you straight to the statute. Again, as we discussed, you have your definitions where they kind of let you know exactly who this applies to, right? And then they go into what it means to contribute to delinquency. So any person who commits any act which causes, tends to cause, encourages, or contributes to a child becoming a delinquent or dependent child or a child in need of services, or induces or endeavors to induce by act, threat, command, or persuasion a child to commit or perform any act, follow any course of conduct, or live in a manner that causes or tends to cause such child to become or to remain a dependent or delinquent or a child in need of services. So, what does that mean, right? That was kind of convoluted, especially if you are someone that is not an attorney or that does not read statutes very often. Let me tell you, statute reading and case law reading is a science within itself. If you are not familiar with the legalese, it can read like a totally different language, right? So what they're pretty much saying is any person who is causing a minor to become in some way a delinquent. And what does a delinquent mean? A delinquent means a minor who is using illicit substances, right? A minor who is doing illegal things, that's a delinquent. So any adult who causes a minor to do illegal things, such as use illegal substances or take substances that may not be illegal for adults to have, right? Such as what? Alcohol, tobacco, right? Substances that may not be illegal for an adult to use, but that are illegal for a child to use. Any adult who is facilitating that behavior is contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Then they explain that this behavior is a misdemeanor, okay? Alrighty, so I'm gonna hop in the chat. Crime Spotter wants to know, could the mother be at fault here for leaving him with the daughter? So that is an interesting question. And as I do when I discuss, the R. Kelly content, before I answer the question about the parents, I want to make this abundantly clear. Any adult who is participating in illicit activity with a minor is going to be found criminally responsible if they are prosecuted. So it does not matter if a parent literally dropped the child off at this person's house and said, oh, here, here, you can have the child. It doesn't matter. The adult who then does something illicit with that minor is still criminally responsible. Now, to answer the question as to whether or not the parents are, the state of Florida actually does have a law on the books by which they can charge parents whose children are abused by someone else. So yes, the state of Florida does have a law that says if your child is abused by someone else because of your negligence, we can charge you. Yes, it is a thing. Now, the follow-up to that is, would this apply in this instance? Because you have to remember, in criminal prosecution, you are looking at the totality of the circumstance, not just this isolated incident, that isolated incident, right? You're looking at the totality of everything. So if in fact the mother was dating Michael Nowak, as she alleges that she was, then you could insinuate that perhaps she had some level of trust with him, right? So when a prosecutor is thinking about whether or not they're going to charge the mother, they're going to think, well, I mean, she was dating him, so she probably trusted him. You wouldn't date someone you don't trust with your child, right? And then the next step they would take is, and also, when the mother did find out about what allegedly happened, she went with her child and took her child to report what happened. And Crime Spotter, more than likely, when they realize that her mother was instrumental in her reporting what happened to her, they will decide not to charge the parent. Because our law does recognize that parents and children are living in a modern world. And parents cannot always control everything that happens to their child. But when you step in as a parent and you say, I took my child to report this, I supported her in reporting this, then a lot of times the law will look at that behavior as, oh, you are a good parent. You did care. You maybe you slipped up for a moment. You trusted someone you shouldn't have, but you were a part of her reporting this and trying to make it right. So that's the logic. And more than likely, but there's always exceptions, her mother will not be prosecuted. Okay. All right. I don't see any other questions. So we are going to hop into my cheat sheet and look at potentially how much time in prison could Michael Nowak be facing. Before I do that, let me say hello to a few people in the chat. Hello, Urban Philosopher. Hello, Taylor Anderson. Let's see. Hi, Lisa Johnson. I think I may have said hi to Lisa already. I don't know, but I want to make sure I get everyone. If you are hanging out with us today and you would like me to give you a shout out, just say hey in the chat and I will most certainly do that. Okay. Now to the cheat sheet. Let us go share screen window. Wait, I must pull it up first. Share screen window. Here we go. All right, let's make this full screen. And then I also want to zoom in for us so we can see it really, really well. Okay, I'm hoping that you all can see that super well. If you can see it very, very well, let me take a look over here in the chat because I really want to make sure that you all can see it. So if you can see the wording very, very well right now, go ahead and let me know. Give me a 1 in the chat or a 2 in the chat. I mean, what does it matter? We don't really use numbers around here. So give me the number of your choice in the chat if you can see the wording very, very well so that we can read it together because I really don't want you to miss this. So let me see. I'm checking out the chat now. All right. So Beautiful Yours says she can see. All right. Number of your choice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 50, 11. Fake numbers apply as well. If you can see the wording and you are ready for us to hop in. In the meantime, I'll take my water break. If you're new here, I take water breaks, when you're speaking a lot for a long period of time. All right, so I see everyone saying they can see. Perfect. All right, so we'll go ahead and hop in. All right, so this is each of the charges that Michael Nowak is facing. Again, we only see one count per charge. That is what we are seeing when we look at the Miami-Dade clerk's office. So when we're looking at the criminal court clerk's office, they are telling us it's one count per charge. What that means is the allegation is that he only did each of these things once. So it's not an allegation that he did these things to this same victim over and over again. Okay? So here we go. I almost said it. Battery on a person between 12 and 18 years of age. I have parentheses F for felony. Okay. Now this crime is a felony. Really? This crime is a felony punishable by up to 15 years in prison. Okay. 15 years of blank offender probation and a potential monetary fine of $10,000. However, if aggravating circumstances exist, then the punishment can actually be life in prison. So, pause. In general, Michael Nowak could be facing up to 15 years of prison and then post-release 15 years of probation. In general. But if there are certain circumstances, meaning if they can prove that certain things occurred that are especially bad, if you're new here, aggravating means especially bad. Mitigating means not so bad. So aggravating to make things worse, mitigating to make something better. So if aggravating circumstances exist, then punishment could be life in prison, lifetime blank offender probation, and a monetary fine of $10,000. So now your question is, well, what are the aggravating circumstances? There are two aggravating circumstances that could potentially apply to the allegations that we've heard thus far. Here's the first one. The victim is unknowingly and without consent drugged so that they are mentally or physically incapacitated. Now remember, this victim is alleging that at some point she passed out. She's alleging that she feels that she must have been given something because at some point she totally blacked out and doesn't know what happened. Now, we heard allegations of alcohol use, but there is the insinuation that in addition to alcohol, she may have also been given some type of drug. Okay? And then we also see a second aggravating factor. The victim is physically incapacitated. Again, we heard the allegation that the young lady is alleging that at some point she passed out, which means she was physically incapacitated for a portion of the time that she was allegedly with Michael Nowak. So all in all, what this means is that if the prosecution can prove that these factors existed, they can try to recommend that Michael Nowak receive life in prison for this allegation. And this is just on the one charge of battery. Okay. Hello to Money to Burn. I see Crime Spotter has a question. I'm cheating, you guys. I'm looking at my phone instead of the screen. The question is, when there is discovery, do you think other people will come forward? Very interesting question, Crime Spotter. And you know what? It is possible. And actually, that is something we will address later on when we talk about Sonetta and some of the other people. By the way, I don't know if it's Sonetta or Sonetter. Does it matter? I don't know. I'm not sure which one is the proper way to say his name. But either way, it will become important later on when we talk about Sonetta and whether or not some of these people who are consistently around Michael Nowak could be implicated in any of this. Okay, so we'll get to that after this. Now, here is another very important thing about this. A person who is sentenced to prison for this type of battery is ineligible for good time and has to serve their entire sentence. One more time. Has to serve their entire sentence. Let that sink in. Because if you have any experience with the criminal justice system, you know that good time is a big deal. There are people with sentences that end up serving half their sentence, less than half, with good time and good behavior and other things that you can do, in exchange with the criminal justice system to have your time reduced. When you're charged with this type of crime, you do not get access to those options. You have to serve your sentence. Someone in the chat says sonnet-er. Okay, so not sonetta, sonnet-er. Cool. Okay. Alrighty, so that was the first felony. Does anyone have any questions about that felony? Let me hop out of the document for a moment. Check in with the chat, see if anyone has any questions. Hello, Doug. All right, does anyone, it's okay to be late, money to burn. Does anyone have any questions about the battery charge and about the potential years that he is facing with that charge? So Crime Spotter has a question that's a bit off topic, but he's a pro fight, so I'll let it slide. He says, will you cover Britney Spears again? I want to, but you guys, I've been so ridiculously busy between work and family. I've been ridiculously busy, and I'm scrunging for time, you know, when it comes to YouTube. So we'll see. Okay. All right. So I don't see any questions about that first felony. So let's dive into the second felony then. Alrighty, we are back in our document. Here we are with our second felony. Let me make the screen large for you. So, unlawful blank activity with a minor. Here we go. That is a felony. Me and these words today. That is a felony punishable by up to 15 years in prison. Okay. 15 years of blank offender probation and a $10,000 fine. The minimum sentence is 5.5 years in prison. With mitigating circumstances, remember, mitigating to make less, right? Aggravating to make worse, to make more. With mitigating circumstances or aggravating circumstances, this sentence can be adjusted. So we know that with this charge, Michael Nowak is facing potentially a minimum of 5.5 years. Mitigating circumstances are something that is presented to the judge that is ruling on sentencing. It could be different aspects of that person's life. If you've ever seen any Law and Order episodes or any movies about criminal trial, you may see the defendant present to a judge certain portions of their life. They may present evidence about them being abused as a child. They may present evidence about them having a particularly difficult life. Usually this evidence is presented in the sentencing phase to convince a judge to say, you know what? Okay, Mr. Nowak, I see that you were allegedly abused as a child, and I'm going to say that that is a mitigating circumstance. That perhaps you developed this alleged abusive behavior as an adult because you were abused as a child. And because of that, I'm going to sway from the minimum and give you 2 years instead. So that's an example of mitigating. Now, aggravating circumstances, we discussed some of those when it comes to the specific charges, right? And then also a criminal record in general can be an aggravating circumstance. So picture the reverse, right? Sentencing phase for the allegations against Michael Nowak. Prosecution can say, Your Honor, we have the rap sheet here. He has committed abusive behavior for years on end. And we think that because of that, he should be given the maximum. He should be given far more than the minimum, right? And then the judge would look at these alleged prior crimes, look at the alleged criminal record, and perhaps consider that and maybe decide to sentence Michael Nowak to the entire maximum, which is the 15 years, right? Now, as far as whether or not he has an alleged criminal record, in reference to my previous hypothetical, right? As I'm sure many of you have seen online, Michael Nowak himself has alleged that he has a criminal history. Now, he is not alleged that he has a criminal history of this type of crime, true, but he has alleged himself, in his own words, that he has a violent criminal history. I believe it was an interview with DJ Vlad, I believe so, where he alleges that he has faced an attempted murder charge before, allegedly. He mentions that he has actually used a firearm to shoot someone before, and that person had severe injury, right? So in his own words, he has alleged having a criminal record. And if in fact he does have a criminal record, the prosecution, you better believe, the prosecution will bring that record out to any sentencing judge if he is convicted. Okay? I'm going to hop out again to answer any questions. Anyone have any questions about this second felony and about the potential sentence therein? And to echo the words of Let Me See Your Transcript, please like, share, and subscribe. I would love that. And here on this channel, we have a conversation about all things legal. We dive into a lot of these pop culture cases and make sure that we have real information, accurate information, okay? All right, so going once, going twice for any questions about this second felony, because if there are none, we're going to dive into the potential sentence for the contributing to the delinquency of a minor. So going once, going twice. Okay, here we go. So let's dive into contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Back into our cheat sheet. All right, and full screen for you guys. All right, so contributing to the delinquency of a minor, a misdemeanor, okay? A first-degree misdemeanor, which is punishable by up to 1 year imprisonment, okay? 1 year of probation and a monetary fine of $1,000. The minimum sentence is probation. The maximum is the 1 year imprisonment. So with this sentence, if convicted, Michael Nowak could just receive probation, or he could actually be sentenced to up to 1 year of imprisonment, okay? So now let's do some random math here, okay? Let's say this first felony is not found to be aggravating. Let's say it's just found to be that it was blank battery on a person between 12 and 18 years of age, right? But let's say still the maximum was applied, right? So 15 years, okay? So we go down here, 15, okay? Then for our second felony, we know that the max is 15, but the minimum is 5.5. So just to get an average and kind of, zhuzh it up and change it up a bit, instead of just going max, max, max and maxing out each charge, let's say 6, okay? So let's say 15, 6, right? And then let's say the sentencing judge says to his or herself, I'm not going to split this up and give you some probation, some imprisonment. We're not going to do that. You'll take the straight 1 year for the misdemeanor, okay? So then 1, all right? Now, I don't want anyone to say that I was on here guessing and da-da-da-da, right? So here we go. Calculator. 15 plus, what did we say, 6 plus 1, 22 years. So let's put that in. So potentially 22 years. That is the potential sentence that Michael Nowak is facing if in fact he is convicted of all 3 of these crimes. Remember, we didn't max out every charge. We maxed out the first one without aggravating circumstances. We took a random average for the middle one, and then we took the 1 year for the last. Okay, so that's an average. He's facing an average of 22 years. Okay, all righty. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, hop back into the chat. I see Mara has a question. Mara says, maybe off topic, but folks are talking a lot. Can these videos be used by the prosecution? Well, Mara, that depends on who you're referring to when you say folks. Now, by folks, do you mean supporters of Michael Nowak? Or do you mean people who are pretty much insinuating that he's guilty of what he's being accused of? Which side are you referring to? Because if you are referring to the side of people who are saying that Michael Nowak is guilty of this, yes, those videos could potentially be used in court. I viewed some of them, and what I have viewed is people who have pictures, videos of Michael Nowak allegedly hanging out with minors who are not his children. Yes, that could be used by the prosecution. Absolutely. Yeah, and Lisa says, can Michael's videos be used? He is talking a lot too. Well, I have to admit, I was sent Michael Nowak's video where he supposedly addresses these allegations, and I started watching it, and it was just I couldn't get through more than a minute of it, and that's the truth. It just really did not seem relevant at all to me. And if in fact he were to say anything at all, because truth be told, if I were his attorney, I would tell him not to say anything at all. But the fact that he came online and said he was going to address it, and then the first minute that I saw was just random euphemisms like the rabbit's got the gun and trying to take me down. And I'm like, you're not Martin Luther King Jr. I don't know what we're saying here, but no. So I didn't last more than a minute. I couldn't watch it. But if in fact he said something that was a valid defense, please let me know. I would love to hear it. Hello, Flawless Beauty. You mean you can't wait for 7 o'clock, Flawless Beauty? I have the live with Diva Divine Light at 7, everyone, if you're interested in following the R. Kelly trial. So any questions about Michael Nowak's accusations, any of his charges? If not, we're going to have a conversation about what could come up in discovery, what could become of this case, and whether or not some of his compatriots, such as Sonnetter, could be implicated in any of this. Let me see, your transcript says being in the Rolls Royce wasn't a good idea. Oh, that's what listen, that just goes to show you how much attention I paid, because I wasn't even paying attention to the fact that he was in, a fancy vehicle. I was just listening and thinking, I've heard nothing relevant to the accusations here. This was a bad idea. You should just not say anything. Hello, I am a queen. All right, so I don't see any questions, so let's dive into it. Now, there will be, if in fact this case continues, there will be discovery. The prosecution is going to try their hardest to get into Michael Nowak's past behavior. Because as we've discussed extensively on this channel, when someone is being accused of these types of crimes, their past behavior can be discussed if the prosecution can establish what? A pattern of behavior. So any prosecutor is going to say to themselves, I want a super strong case. I want a rock solid case. And how do I get that? I get that by getting access to things he's done in the past. So they are going to dig into his past and see if they can prove that he has a pattern of this behavior. And then they will say, well, Judge, it's a pattern. It's modus operandi. So now we should be able to discuss the things that he has done in the past. And once they start digging into his past, now you have people like Sonnetter being implicated. So what I've also seen circulating online is a video in which Sonnetter refers to Michael Nowak's relation with one of his distant family members. And he insinuates that Michael Nowak had an inappropriate relationship with this minor. Now, if in fact Sonnetter knew this information, right, and he decided not to do anything with this information, he can be held criminally responsible for that. Not only can he be held civilly responsible, if for some reason one of these victims decided to sue, right? But he can be held criminally responsible for knowing that a minor was being abused in an intimate manner and not reporting it, making some random video where he sort of kind of insinuates it, but still really taking no efforts to report it to law enforcement. That could be something that he could be in trouble for, right? And then you have also the fact that when you're talking about this type of alleged behavior, the type of behavior alleged here, the file behavior, it is a psychological, some people call it a disorder, some people just call it a condition. But it is psychological, it is chronic, and it is recurring. What does that mean? That means that someone who truly exhibits this behavior, it is not new. So if in fact Michael Nowak is guilty of these allegations, this behavior is not new. He has been doing these things if he did them and if he does them, for years. So again, here comes who? Sonetter. How many years have you known this man? How close were you? Because he seems to insinuate online that they're very close. Were you not aware of these allegations, of these things that he was allegedly doing? Did you not report them because perhaps you were involved? This is the mindset of law enforcement. So I'm not saying that for anybody online to take it personally and get upset, right? It is the mindset of prosecution that I am exposing you to, right? That I'm showing you how they're going to go about building this case. So yes, they are going to try to dig into his past. They are going to try their hardest to establish modus operandi via a pattern of behavior. And if they can bring other people into it, they will. If they can bring Sonetter into it and say, hey, listen, we're going to not dig into how much you knew. We're going to help you out, but you have to help us out. We want some information on his past behavior, right? All of that is possible. Okay. So hi, Sir Anthony. Thank you for these so pleasant greetings. Everyone in the chat right now, please hit the like button. Please, please, please. And subscribe if you are not subscribed. And let me ask you, what say you, my people in the chat? And if you're catching it on the replay, you as well. Do you think that Michael Nowak will be found guilty of these charges? Do you think that perhaps he might plead to a lesser charge? Or do you think that, as his attorney so confidently stated, he will be totally vindicated and totally acquitted? What say you? What do you think, my people in the chat? And I'm going to share your thoughts. So I'll give you a second, but let us know. What do you think? Your options are: he will be convicted, he will plead to a lesser charge, or he'll be acquitted. All right, so let me see. Your transcript says found guilty or plea. So that's our first vote in. Found guilty or plea. All right, what say you? Come on, Money to Burn, Sir Anthony, Mara, who else is here? KKC, Flawless Beauty, and I mean, everyone else that's here, because there's a bunch of you that are here and not in the chat. But listen, I understand. It's not every day that you're like, I'm in the mood to chit chat, right? All right, so Sir Anthony has a question. But Sir Anthony, did you vote? What's your vote? Sir Anthony's question is, if Sonetter never witnessed anything firsthand, couldn't he easily deny knowing anything? Well, Sir Anthony, hypothetically, yes, he has plausible deniability. He could say, well, I saw him with this minor who I knew he wasn't related to, but I never saw him do anything. Yes, he does have some level of plausible deniability. All right, Carla Martin, how are you, Carla Martin? Carla Martin thinks that he will plead. And she says, thank you for the excellent analysis. Carla Martin, you are very welcome. Thank you for your time and your presence. All right. Hi to the truth. I am Queen says, I think he will be convicted. Mara thinks that he'll plead to a lesser charge. Okay. Flawless Beauty says, found guilty. Miss Down South says, oh, hold on. He is guilty. Astrologically speaking, interesting. Give us a little more on that. Astrology? Interesting. Crime Spotter says, plea. Doug says, I believe he will wiggle his way out. He is very cunning, although I believe that he's guilty. So interesting. So you know what? I think that Doug, and Doug, thank you for sharing your opinion with us and for being so transparent and honest, right? Let me tell you, Doug, I think there are a lot of people with your opinion who just are afraid to say it. I think there are a lot of people right now thinking, yeah, he did it, but he's going to find some way to get out of it. I think your opinion might actually be the opinion that everyone is secretly having, Doug. So thank you for sharing that. And you know what? We have seen time and time again, many people acquitted on charges that seem to be pretty solid. So you can never count anything out. He may very well be acquitted. All right. And then the truth thinks it's over for him. So the truth thinks that he will be convicted. Hey, you never know. You never know. But for all of those who are having the debate on the DNA, people, they would not have been able to get the arrest warrant if the DNA did not match. That's it. Okay. All right. So Crime Spotter says there are a lot of eyes on this since the Charlemagne case, and people want a conviction on this type of case. That's possible. That is possible. Another interesting perspective. So we are rounding up our hour here. You guys know, usually when I hop on for about an hour. I will be back at 7 with Diva Divine Light to continue our analysis of the R. Kelly trial. But I wanted to address this Brother Polight issue and these charges because there is so much misinformation and quite frankly, concerning conversation going on out there. I see a lot of adults going out of their way to explain how these things could have happened but been okay. So there aren't a lot of people saying that he's innocent. There are not a lot of people out here saying, I believe that Polight is innocent. But instead, there are a lot of people out here saying, well, maybe the girl gave consent. It's still illegal. Maybe the mother gave consent. Still illegal. Right? So I wanted to come on and make sure we clear that up. Like I'm always saying with the R. Kelly trial, you guys, a minor cannot consent. A minor cannot give an adult consent to do anything illegal to them. So for those of you out there trying to insinuate that, it's a no-go. Okay? And I'm not sure how to say your name. I just see Blank. So let me show your comment. Shout out to Blank. Blank says this is very disturbing and you can't explain it away. And that is correct. That is correct. Oh boy. Well, everyone, it has been a pleasure being with you for this past hour. As you know, here on Empowered Esquire TV, we discuss life lessons through a legal lens. And so, what have we learned today? Well, today we learned that a minor cannot consent to illicit behavior with an adult. We also learned that you can look up all of the criminal arrests in a state through their clerk's office. And last but not least, we learned more about modus operandi, right? And about the fact that when you're in a Bill Cosby-esque case, an R. Kelly-esque case, a Michael Nowak-esque case, your past behavior as far as intimate conduct can be brought into your current prosecution if a pattern of behavior is established. Okay? And Blank says, there's an entire hour to go. So let me get this straight. I'm coming back at 7 with Diva Divine Light. And let's say I wanted my hour to, I don't know, drink some seltzer water, put my feet up. I don't get to relax for an hour?